All right, this is my conclusion to my analysis of the Civil War. This analysis of the Civil War is part of a series of how the U.S. starts wars. Uh, it is not an example. It is not an example of how the U.S. started the war. However, the Civil War is an example of how the Southern economic political elites manipulated the Southern masses to start a war. Right. It's also yet another example of crap U.S. history, full of crap arguments. Uh, I don't want to go through the whole thing. I went through and proved each one to be false. You got to go back to old lectures, but just things like, well, the slaves were freed as a result of the Civil War. Therefore, that means that's the reason why this war was fought. No. Or, when the southern states started seceding, they're all screaming loud that Lincoln is going to free the slaves. Lincoln's going to free the slaves. Right? That's proof that he was going to free the slaves. No, it's not. Lincoln and all the rest of the northern politicians did the exact opposite of trying to free the slaves. They protected and promoted slavery in order to prevent a war. And I don't want to go down the whole list. This is a waste of time. If you want to examine it, go back to an old lecture. Uh, and they ignore the facts. Right. So other examples of crap history we examined already are Gulf of Tonkin, the start of the Vietnam War. Pearl Harbor's crap history. War of 1812 is crap history. Mexican-American War is crap history. And this is the best of our scholarly history. It's crap. And it only gets worse as you go down the list from, scholarly to History Channel to news media and then Hollywood movies. That is the absolute worst. Hollywood movies are such bogus distortions. Trying to sell tickets and trying to pump out propaganda. That's the two reasons why they do it. All right. The Civil War is an example of a key turning point in U.S. expansion history, unleashing Western expansion. 25 years after the Civil War, there was a rapid explosion of Western expansion. The Civil War is important in my series of how the U.S. starts wars because this Western expansion directly relates to the acceleration of Indian wars. I mean, if you're going to expand west and at an accelerated rate, that requires accelerated wars on the Indians to get them off the land. Right? And then it has an effect upon the Spanish-American War, which is more complicated, but it does. All right. So finally, it is an example of how history can be used as a social force. And I want to talk about this right now. We'll do a brief diversion here because really this is more important in the big picture. So social forces are about power and control, right? In one of the theories in sociology called conflict theory, it states that that power is the ability of groups or individuals to make their own concerns and interests count, even when others resist. Right? All right, that's true, but true power is really the ability to get people to want to do what serves your interest, even if it runs counter to their interests. Of course, however, they can never know that. They can never be allowed to know that. Right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. Thusly, true power is not about physical coercion, which is A, limited in scope, B, suboptimal in tapping human potential, human creativity, energy, and productivity, and C, it's resource intensive, taking a lot of people and a lot of resources to force these people to give you the minimum effort. Right? And they're going to give you opposition. They're going to give you rebellion. You're going to get fights, and it's not going to be that effective. You want people full on board, hard charging to get what you want. Okay. So instead, true power is about influencing perceptions, especially beliefs and motivations. Beliefs and motivations determine action, or in some cases inaction if that's what you want. And that's your desired goal or outcome. For example, no resistance or opposition to a desired government action. Right? All right. If the beliefs and motivations of a population can be controlled, then you can control collective action, right? Across a whole nation, for example, which is the real seat of power because that allows you to control collective resources, human and material resources, the two main categories of resources. Examples of social forces include government, media, entertainment industry, commercial marketing, social media, culture, education, close relations, physical world, work, material conditions, technology, God, religion. I know what people are going to say, like, what? This stuff has no control over me. Right? You can't fool me. You can't control me. So I expect people to say, oh, that's conspiracy theory. None of that can control me. I can't be fooled because I'm too smart. I mean, come on. I just taught you a number of wars, and I'm going to teach you more that the government manipulated both Congress and the masses into completely. I mean, in the case of Gulf of Tonkin, 100% of congressmen fall for it. So let's do a quick review. All right. Let's try to keep in mind that the government can manipulate the people, and it has over and over. Same old game. History repeats itself. So we'll talk about the Iraq Invasion War. Well, the reason behind the war was 9/11 attacks. Right? 9/11 attacks occurred in 2001. Right? On that day, they knew without any doubt that it was Al Qaeda and Bin Laden. Right? However, day one, both the Bush administration and Bush himself is pushing to pin this on Iraq. Right? Al Qaeda did it, but let's go use that to attack Iraq. Yeah, that's it. All right, so what they did is they conducted a bait and switch time with the 1 year anniversary of 9/11. You got to use timing, right? So all the fear and terror and horror that was generated by the attacks is reactivated on the anniversary, and it is flipped and dumped upon Iraq, right? And there was a plan to do this. In fact, they bragged about it. They bragged about a meticulously planned strategy to persuade the public, the Congress, and the allies of the need to confront the threat of Saddam Hussein. In the end, it'll be difficult for anyone to vote against the Iraq War resolution, the administration officials said. Right? So remember how they timed it with 9/11, their big blitz of fear? They used fear-mongering. Fear every day. WMD. It's going to be way worse than 9/11. You think 9/11 was bad? This is nothing. This is a drop in the bucket compared to what will happen if, when Saddam has a nuclear weapon. And he's going to have one in just a few months. That's what they said in the intelligence report here. And whether it's, chemical weapons, biological weapons, right? All the WMD, which became, which became a lie, which was a lie, right? Fear every day, pumping it up. Then they start filtering in there, oh, we need this resolution. This is what's going to keep us safe. Then they put the vote for the resolution right here, right before the congressional recess, which is right before the general election, right? This became the leverage. You vote against the resolution amidst this toxic fear environment that they created like a witch's brew, right? You just commit political suicide. Not only are you un-American, unpatriotic, you're some crazy liberal, radical who is a coddler, lover of terrorists, and you don't care about the American public, right? You're dead. And as soon as they got the resolution, they got their hot little ticket to war, right? This has been done, repeatedly in our history, right? Resolutions are just as good as war. Resolutions authorizing the president to use military force are just as good as a declaration of war, except for a few miscellaneous things. All right. So that's how they manipulated both the Congress and the public into that war. All right. Then next war I discussed was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where you manufactured a dramatic event to get the Vietnam War, right? Once again, they got a resolution based on this. And a key architect of the planning here was this guy here, this little sneaky dude named George Bundy. Part of the power club, the Bonesmen, right? One of three key ones. Harriman was probably the central figure there. All right, he started talking about threat signals way back in May, right? Said, hey, can we send threat signals like the threat signals we sent to the Soviets and the Cubans that got them to put missiles into Cuba, you know? And think about what happened. As soon as they put missiles into Cuba, we saw them as the aggressors, as a threat, you know, potentially going to whack us with nuclear missiles. And it created a lot of fear in America, right? Can we do the same thing to the North Vietnamese? And a couple days later, he comes out with a plan, which is a whole list of threat signals, 30-day plan, right? They start doing a few here, and they do 2 big batches together, 2 big waves, mid-June, mid-July, right? Threat, build up weapons. We're going to attack you, everyone, including Johnson. We're going to invade you. We're going to attack you. We're going to whack you bad. We got war plans. Then they do it again here, mid-July, and they also actually launch attacks, covert commando raids, sabotage raids, blowing up crap, attacking into North Vietnam, and then they brag about it, right? And say, oh, we're going to do far worse. Then they have 2 big, they have 2 attacks upon North Vietnamese islands, right? Right after that, they sent up a U.S. warship, the USS Maddox, right to where they attacked. Zooming right past. This is where you got to go. This is your point Alpha, point Charlie, point Bravo, point Charlie, point Delta. Takes them right past those islands where we just attacked, right? And while they're going up, we have 2 air attacks. So we have 4 attacks. And then this ship gets attacked. So we spend a whole couple months. We're gonna attack you. We're gonna attack you. We're gonna attack you. It's coming. We're gonna invade your ass, right? And then we start attacking them. Then we send up a ship right to where we attacked. And of course, that creates an incident. There was a real attack because one of the islands that we bombarded, had a torpedo boat base. You went right up to that. They're ordered to go to that island, and they're attacked by 3 torpedo boats. It created a real incident. Happened, right? But it's all manufactured. It was all induced. It was all provoked. It was all set up. Then the ship ran out of the area, but 5 hours later, it's sent back in with another ship, USS Maddox and USS Turner Joy, and there was a fake attack. It never occurred, right? And it was reported to have been questionable. Didn't matter. Johnson takes it and said, oh, there's repeated attacks. There's a pattern here, right? So we got to do something. He orders bombings on North Vietnam, and then he ramrods a congressional resolution through Congress. They all sign off on it. 100% of congressmen are suckered by this, right? And then all but 2 senators are suckered by this. They sign off on it. What is that? Is that to keep us safe? No, that's a hot little ticket to war right there. All right. Same method done in Spanish-American War, Vietnam, and Iraq Invasion War. Right? So that's how we got the Vietnam War. All right, now, Pearl Harbor attack is another example of manipulation. And at the very start of my analysis just presented a small fraction of the facts. I mean, they're all key facts, right? But you can't teach everything, right? Otherwise, people just drift off, right? And this is a summary of the summary. Right? I'm not even going to teach you this. I'm just going to go to the conclusion. So I said the FDR administration not only knew the attack was coming, they in fact maneuvered Japan into attacking, and then opened the way for a successful attack. Sounds crazy. I know people say conspiracy theory. That's crazy, right? Well, I proved it. With even just a small summary, I can prove it, right? I'm not going to go over it because there's not enough time here. And the War of 1812, well, the War of 1812, there's nothing to prove. Without any question, we started this war, right? But then we said, oh, yeah, it's because of the British, the impressment of sailors, the Order in Council. They've been impressing sailors since the beginning of the war. Like 19 years has been going on. Now you're going to start a war, right? And most of these guys were British deserters. Then Orders of Councils was, that was bogus because 5 days after we declared war, they rescinded the Order of Council, and that didn't stop us, right? It shows that it was a cover story. The real motives for the war were bigger, right, and broader. They were far broader strategic and acquisitional objectives. We didn't own much of the United States at that time. We had to go out and get it, or compete with Britain. All right. And we had to defeat the Spanish and later the Mexicans, which we did here. All right. So Mexican-American War. Now, it's an example of how Polk sold the war to Congress and the U.S. public upon three things. He said, in his speech to Congress, he said, oh, Mexico has invaded American soil, and they spilt American blood on American soil, right? Then he says, we're the good guys. We're doing everything for peace. That's all we want. We're trying to establish friendship, he said, with them, right? And he said, they refused to receive our peace offering, our envoy, who's been sent down there to adjust every difference between our countries, fair and square. We're honest brokers. And Mexico has long continued a series of offenses against Americans. They're the troublemakers, right? Well, that's totally opposite of what was really going on. We committed 5 acts of war, including invading Mexico land, including stealing Mexican land, taking all of Texas, including imposing a naval blockade, which is an act of war. And the soil that American blood was spilt upon was Mexican soil, right? Mexico was only defending its land. The only way you could say that it was American land is if you could say that the Treaty of Velasco was valid. And only a flagrant, totally dishonest, self-serving liar could say that. But that happens. It's what you want to believe. That dominates. Unfortunately, people aren't fair and honest. All right, Polk set up a fait accompli to ensure Mexico would not and could not receive Slidell. So this whole thing, they rejected our. This was a setup. They sent them down there under conditions they had to reject them. They could not and would not receive them. Hell, they said one of the conditions is, we negotiate the Texas situation, right? Well, what do? When he's down there, we annex Texas, give it immediate statehood, and then we demand them to pay us money. I mean, come on. So by far, the U.S. had committed a larger amount of offenses against Mexico, including Americans invaded Mexico 3 times. Americans started 3 revolutions in Mexico. I mean, this is 6 wars, right? The U.S. steals their entire state of Texas. And then on top of all this stuff here, we demand they pay us. Hey, you pay us reparations, Right? Mexico's like, what? Wait, we said that we'll accept the guy under conditions that we negotiate payments to us. Not we're paying you. Look at all this crap you've done. All right. All right, so this is an example of how people can be manipulated by social forces. So if you say, you can't be manipulated. I just told you how clearly everyone's manipulated. Congress is manipulated. All right? Now, here's another thing. Every damn single day, masses are manipulated by social reality. The crap that's passed in their cell phones, their smartphones, which are really their idiot phones. All right? Social reality is another social force that people are manipulated by every single day. Right? They're going to laugh and say, you can't fool me. I've taught social reality thousands of times, and it does not matter. They immediately go back to what's being passed. Oh, that's real. And social reality is simple and stupid, and not based on anything factual and real or intelligent. It's just something simple you can say in 1 or 2 sentences that everyone's passing, and that makes it seem real in people's heads. Oh, everyone's saying it, so that wins. That's truth. And it's just crazy insane. But that's how people think. So what I want to do as far as giving you an overall impression of social forces, I want to teach you the very first thing I teach in sociology. This is day number 1. Introduce who I am, what my background is, and I teach this, right? So, a big area in sociology is study of social forces, and the target of social forces that is being tried to control is the center of your universe, right? And that's your perceptions, okay? So this is you right here. This is the target. All your perceptions, including all your beliefs and your opinions, right? This is your cognitive reality. And your cognitive reality is the only reality you know. People think, oh, I know reality outside my... No, you don't know. What you know, the only reality you know is a reality in your head, because that's where knowing is. And how you structure your perceptions of reality, determines the quality of how you see things. All right. So these are all social forces, right? We said government is a social force. It can influence you, how you see things, influence your perceptions. I gave you clear examples of how you're totally manipulated into wars. Then the news media, they can, or any media in general, right? They can manipulate you, not just false news, but they're all slanting stories, distorting stories, right? Even their selection of what story to tell and what not, right, helps shape your reality, right? And it is often the stuff they leave out that is more important. Entertainment can influence you. The most powerful source of history is not academic scholarly books. It's Hollywood history, which is crap. This is total garbage history, and it is the most dominant form. Right? It's easy to understand. It seems real because there's real characters, real figures saying real things. And there's consequences. There's drama. There's tension. Right? There's hopes, and there's rejoicing, and there's sorrow. And all those emotions. Right? That's drama. Right? It has a greater impact than reading a book that's going to put you to sleep as soon as you open it. All right. So the worst is Hollywood history, man. It's so much propaganda, so much bullshit, right? But not other than that, it can influence. Well, how do movies influence? Can it influence behavior? Some people say it influences violence. All right, to select a few people who are susceptible, it can. Not everyone's going to go out and start killing people because they see it in movies, right? Very few, but there's been cases, right? But it has a bigger effect in other ways. Simple things like manner of speech, style of dress, and that goes along with commerce, right? Marketing, advertising. In fact, there's a lot of advertising in movies, right? But commerce marketing has a huge effect. And if you think, no, it can't influence, man, it does. That's why it's a multi-billion dollar industry. It makes a lot of money, because if you don't have advertising, you're not going to sell your product. People buy it because they see it. They know of it. Don't tell me advertising doesn't have effect here, all right? And they also advertise through social media. Also, news, or crap news, is passed through social media, like Facebook, right? How anyone falls for that, I don't know. But they do. Plenty of people do. And they're all intelligent consumers of information. They fall for crap like that. All right. Now, another source of news that is social reality passed through social media, which is what everyone is saying, right? That's social reality, the dominant thing that everyone's saying. It creates a big wave of what everyone's saying, right? A mass momentum, right? No facts are needed, no intelligence is needed, and it dominates truth. It just has to be simple, easy to understand, in 1 or 2 cents, in a 20-second blurb. That's all. That's right. That's all it is, and that dominates the perception of truth and reality. If everyone's saying it, right? It is so farcical, so comical, yet the masses all fall for this. Another word for that is smartphone reality. Here's the term on smartphone reality. It's been said that smartphones are making people stupid. And I say, no, it's not making them stupid. They're stupid already. Smartphones are only enhancing that stupidity. It's amplifying their stupidity, but it already exists, right? And it doesn't matter how many times I teach social reality. Everyone just immediately goes back to their phone. See, what's everyone saying about this? Oh, that's true, because everyone's saying it. When it's ridiculous and baseless, it dominates so. You think people do research? They don't even pay attention to my lectures. What dominates is the crap being passed in social reality. All right. So other things are like culture. Culture can have a big impact upon your perceptions. Education, we're going to talk about that today. Right? It can influence your beliefs. Right? Stuff you're taught, especially like history, U.S. history. We'll talk about that today. And of course, your cliques and friends have a big influence upon you. All right. Oftentimes it gets bigger than your family, as you're growing up. By the time you get to middle school, high school, sometimes your peer groups have a bigger effect. It depends on all the factors, how you're raised, how tight your family is. Physical world can obviously have an effect upon your reality. For example, you get run over by a car, you're not going to have a good day in your physical reality, your cognitive reality there. All right, job can have effect, which is affected by the economy, which is affected by the government, right? And your job can affect affected by your bosses and coworkers. Government can affect. I know the government, for example, can network your bosses and coworkers and screw with you. Right? That's a whole other thing, though. That's more CIA games that are played. Network theory. Changing technologies can affect your job. Changing technologies can affect your whole daily life, right? All right. So all this stuff can affect upon your cognitive reality. Once again, that's the only reality you know. All right. Okay. Now, the greatest resource for manipulation is the self. Why is that? Well, the self is the will, and thus the self is what drives us. Right? The self is a fundamental motivator of all our behavior, determining everything we do, right? What we think. So what we do and what we think is determined by the self. And a dominant characteristic of the self is self-serving, right? It's self-satisfying, self-protecting. That's a powerful driving force. It's self-promoting. It's self-aggregating. Get more from me, right? It's self-righteous. I'm right, I'm good, despite of whatever you do, right? And I tell you what, people easily overlook all the crap they do. They'll point the finger in a second when someone else does the same thing they do, right? They'll go crazy when someone does the exact same thing they do. When they do it, they totally put it out of their mind, ignore it. And they'll think, I'm an angel, I'm moral. Given this, manipulation of people require that you align what you want them to do with one of these motives or a combination of them, right? So what you want to get them to do, you have to align that with their own driving self-motivations, right? Then it's no effort. You don't have to twist arms. You don't have to, strong arm people, all right? Right? They're going to want to do. They're going to go all out doing what you want them to do. That's the idea here. That takes manipulating their perceptions. For example, to get the masses to fight a war, manipulators employ, right, one, self-protection. Okay? This always works. This is why fear-mongering always works. One example, around Iraq invasion war. right? I told you how they had a big, campaign, a big blitz of fear every damn day. WMD. It's gonna be so much worse than 9/11, right? Building up fear. Gulf of Tonkin, right? You before the incident, you time release. Oh, the communists are going to do something. Communists are going to threaten to attack, right? Then you manufacture an event, right? An incident, and it's like, oh crap, we got to defend ourselves. The communists are on them. They're up to something. Civil War, right? The North is going to free the slaves. This was total bullshit, right? There was no move to free the slaves, right? And the Northern government, after the South seceded, did everything to bend over backwards, do cartwheels, do backflips, stand on their head to guarantee protection forever of slavery and promotion of slavery, expansion of slavery. They did the opposite, right? Okay. But it's stuff like, fear mongering works, right? Why does fear work? Because it is a primal survival instinct, right? It overcomes rational thought. People don't sit back. They say, we got to defend ourselves. And it works every time. History repeats itself. People think, you can't fool me. Man, this works every time. Self-protection and self-righteousness, right? That leads to revenge. For example, you take Pearl Harbor, for example, right? But you take any of our damn wars, right? Let's say Pearl Harbor, right? I told you how it's totally set up, right? But to the very last day of the war, American soldiers were fighting like mad dogs, right? Now, why is that? Because the damn Japs attacked Pearl Harbor. We got to get some revenge, right? And they were fighting hard. Okay. Then you also got the Iraq Invasion War. I talked to so many people, right? If I complain about the war, they said, people say, what are you talking about? We had 9/11, for God's sakes. I'm thinking, for God's sakes, that's totally stupid. I'm serious. I mean, did Iraq do 9/11? No, right? Was Iraq supporting Al Qaeda? No. Did Iraq have WMD? No, right? All right, so but here's other examples. People fought like mad dogs. Remember the Alamo. Remember the Maine, right? The USS Maine, if you don't remember. A lot of people don't know what the Maine's all about, I swear. Remember Custer's Last Stand. Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember 9/11. Remember this and that, right? Yet people all self-protecting and self-righteous, right? Want to get some payback. All right, self-promoting, ego-enhancing pride. This is almost, what do I want to say, endemic, or this is just rife throughout American society, right? Pumping up patriotism, waving the flag. Patriotism is a powerful. Why? Because it's an emotion. It's attached to yourself. It feeds people's primal, egotistical needs and wants, right? It is held so dear to their heart, right? You say something about it, they'll go crazy on you, right? Why? Because of something good, right? No, because of their pride is hurt, right? Deep down, it's an emotion, and they'll get crazy mad at you, right? This need is deep down in their guts. And there's also a primal instinctive element of in-group, out-group identification. And that's rooted in a combination of self-protection. That's one of the reasons why, like, innately, like, there's these anthropological studies, right? Whole in-group, out-group thing, right? It's because there's like a primal need, a self-protection, and it goes with self-serving. Protecting your interests and is also expanding your interests too, right? Protecting what you got and getting more, right? Appeals to pride, vanity, ego are always effective. People are natural born suckers for that, especially when there's so much self-serving emotions attached to symbols, right? Things like the flag, the national anthem. Man, that just evokes powerful emotions. People get all crazy. If you burn a flag, they'll want to kill a person, I swear, for burning a piece of cloth, all right? It's not about our values. It's really American values that make us great, make us good. To whatever extent we're good is if we stick to our values, which we don't do too often and often enough. All right. These symbols that have nothing to do with that. They say they represent, no, these symbols are about attachment to self. Governments began exploiting patriotism after seeing its powerful effects in the French Revolutionary Wars. All right. So yeah, prior to this, there weren't very many nations. You could say England was a nation. You could say France had some national identity, right? But a lot throughout Europe, there wasn't really nations developed. There's more like little pockets of principalities all throughout Europe, right? And the sense of nationalism didn't become big at all, or even a factor in war, until the French Revolutionary Wars. That's when nationalism became a big factor, and it was only on the French side, right? And that proved to be a big element in the power of the French army. That these guys were driven by patriotism and nationalism, all right? And that was driven by a sense of self. They're protecting their newly won representation, their democracy, their freedom, right? That they won. They're not going to let some reactionary, monarchist countries come and overthrow their democracy, right? So they're going to fight like mad dogs. All right. So patriotism has historically developed as a potential device to manipulate the masses. Patriotism is entirely egocentric and self-serving. Patriotism is driven by powerful, blind emotions, usually through attached symbols, but always driven by powerful, instinctive drive for self-pleasing. That's the engine driving it. Patriotism is devoid of real values and principles, honesty, truth, fairness, goodness, godliness, right? I mean, this is what should drive people, all right? What is right before God? If you're a Christian, right? They're going to be driven by their damn flag, right? Although people want to think so, right? That's not really true. Right? What dominates is me and my country. And people will be self-righteous and blindly believe in the goodness of their country. Or if they can't, they'll twist it and distort things in some way to make it so. Right? I swear that's what people do. All right. Honesty, integrity, fairness. Right? It's about me. Self-aggregating, expand our empire, more for me. I tell you what, this is still dominating people, right? In the old days, it was like, you join a war because you have chance for plunder, wealth, you have nothing else going on, right? You can get rich, right? Get some stuff. All right. But, deep down, this is still a driving force, right? Probably people won't admit this, but deep down, this is a driving force. And I believe this is the reason why Trump is popular with his America first, make America great. Why? Because it comes down to more for me first. Right? They don't realize how Trump can screw up the economy for everyone. Short-sighted stuff. All right. So self-protection and support for leaders go hand in hand. For example, whenever a country is attacked or threatened, there's always a rally around the president. All right. This is an old principle. For example, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was totally manufactured, and prior to it, in the June 10th meeting in Honolulu, Dean Rusk, the Secretary of State, said, hey, you know what? If we get a dramatic event, of course, we'll go straight for a resolution. We'll get that resolution we want. Then they get the war, right? And there's also going to be a rally around the president, he said. And sure enough, LBJ's popularity was rock bottom, like 33%, right? In the low 30s. And overnight, it doubled to the mid 60s. Overnight, right? Right? And they cooked up this whole war, this whole incident, right? And Johnson was running on a peace ticket. Okay? Running for election on a peace ticket, and they're cooking up a war. All right, 9/11 occurs. George W. Bush had low approval ratings. Also, his approval ratings skyrocketed after 9/11. And whenever there was like 9/11 attack or something like that, I remember after the 9/11 attack, There's a rally around the flag, right? You're gonna see flags being put up in people's yards. The people are gonna be driving their cars with flags flying from their windows, right? You'll be seeing Harley Davidsons. I've seen guys, you know, strapping flag poles to their motorcycles, riding around with a big ass flag, you know, streaming behind their motorcycle, right? Uh, Self-promoting and self-righteousness, right? You manufacture myths about the goodness and righteousness of your nation. This is why the peace persona method works, right? You know, and all these guys use it. All these presidents. Polk used it in the Mexican-American War. McKinley used it in Spanish-American War. FDR used it, right? LBJ used it, right? Remember, he ran on a peace ticket. And he got elected on a peace ticket. All the while, he's manufacturing a war. All right, so this will increase the tendency of the masses to blindly accept the government actions like wars as being justified. All right, and the Civil War is an example of this. Manufacturing the goodness of our country. Oh, we fought the Civil War to free the slaves. My ass. All right. Okay, so now I want to kind of go off to the side and say, you know how I say the biggest resource for manipulation is a self? You want to attach some sort of self-interest to what you want them to do. Make it align. And I tell you what, you'll get people going all out to support what you want to do, to actually do what you want them to do. Right? And I'm saying this is fundamental to economics too. Right? So I showed you the diagram analyzing the Republican, you know, agenda for Western expansion. And I said this element here was really about self-interest, self-motivation, you know, and you want to increase opportunity because that increases human incentive. Human incentive to what? To better the government? Right? No, to better themselves. To better the nation? No, to better themselves. Right? Increases human incentive, motivation, energy, right? And increases, you know, more effective utilization of your human resources. All right, this is all well and good, right? Make people productive, right? It's better for everyone. Utilization of self and human resource. So I showed the diagram, and this is an old concept, the concept of enlightened self-interest, right? Guys like Adam Smith, Tocqueville were all saying this stuff, right? And the idea is this, right? You know, hey, don't fight the fact that people are self-interested, self-serving. Use that, right? Let it drive productive action, right? All right. For example, all right. Well, let's say a person starts a little company. Let's say they have a cell phone company, right? Competing with other cell phone manufacturers, or whatever, right? Well, you know, they're not there thinking, oh, what I want to do is I want to make the best product for the people. No, they want to make the best sales for themselves, to make themselves the most money, right? So they got to compete with other companies. So they're going to make the best product at the best price. Better product, cheaper cost. Well, you're going to beat your competition, right? It's totally self-serving, but you know what? There's a benefit. There's an economic benefit. You create a better product, right? You benefit society, right? But what you're doing is you're not suppressing this self-interest. You're harnessing it. Okay? That's enlightened self-interest. There's nothing enlightened about it. It's totally self-serving, right? But it's beneficial. All right? It is why capitalism works, but not without problems. There's a lot of problems with capitalism, right? Key of which, I believe, is wars. Damn wars we fight, right? And that's my biggest problem. I have a real problem with wars being fought for profit, right? It's just sickening, right? You know, I don't know if other people, you know, are bothered by it as much as me, but I tell you, it bothers me, right? And that's why I'm willing to, you know, get screwed and, you know, put my whole life on the line here. It's because I'm just driven. It's pissing me off. And it's why communism failed, right? So it's why capitalism worked and communism. You know, no communist thing is bogus, right? I mean, well, here's one of the things Marx says. This is kind of like one of the foundations of communist ideology. He said everything, you know, every man according to his capability and every man according to his needs. What he meant by that is, you know, every man is going to produce to the maximum of his capability and everyone's going to take only what they need. Oh, hogwash. I mean, come on. People are going to take everything they can get and do as little as possible, right? Right? And if what they get is not based upon what they perform, well, they're going to do the least amount possible. They're going to get whatever anyways. They're not going to do anything, right? And then what do you have? You have an unproductive working force across society, right? All right. I mean, in what universe did he think that was going to work? That's just not human nature. Human nature, I'm sorry, is driven by self-interest, self-serving, right? You got to be honest about that and then tap that resource, right? It's about beneficial means of harnessing the self, right? It's about motivating energy, effort, and creativity, right? It's about creating opportunities and incentives, right? You know what? Don't shut people down. Provide opportunities, provide incentives, help them increase their skill levels, right? Help them be more productive. That's going to benefit the economy. It's about structuring a system in which you unleash beneficial, productive enterprises while eliminating short-sighted, self-serving, greedy practices, which can destroy the market and screw the system for everyone. And it does, right? You think people are looking out for the best of the overall system? No, they're looking out for the best for number one. And if they find some clever way to benefit themselves better, right, they'll do it. No matter what harm it causes. They may not even know the harm, but even if it does cause harm, they don't care so long as they get theirs before it all crashes. Right. Now, I know some people hate the R word, regulations, right? Right? But laissez-faire, that's not going to work, right? That's going to be chaos. Are you kidding me? Right? It's going to be every man for himself. Take what you can. Screw the system, right? That won't work because there will always be greedy people who will have the attitude, I'm going to get rich quick, and I don't care if I crash the entire damn economy and hurt everyone else, so long as I get mine before it all collapses, right? And usually they're not even thinking they're going to collapse the economy. They're not looking beyond getting themselves rich right then, right? Whatever happens, that's secondary. All right, so there has to be rules for the game to ensure beneficial, productive behavior, or people will screw the market in their short-sighted schemes to get rich. 2007, that's a total example of that, right? How people are just, they're going to screw the financial system. It's going to crash. They're setting it up to crash, and they don't care because they're making money, and they're going to get rich quick, right? I did an analysis of that, and I can't teach it all now, but you can go back and look at that. Of course, overregulation must be avoided. Right, you don't. That's the R. You don't want to overregulate, right? Right. At the same time, you better have sufficient rules so that people don't screw the system. Right. That's going to screw it for everyone. It's going to screw the economy. All right. I give football as an analogy. Right. Football to me is just a wonderful sport. Probably the best sport in the whole damn world as far as quality of athletic ability. Right, quality of complexity, combined team effort, offensive and defensive schemes. I mean, just simple, complete, throwing a 60-yard pass, right? Hitting a guy running at full speed who's almost as fast as an Olympic runner, right? Trying to evade, defensive protections at the same time, and guys making fabulous catches, one-handed catches, diving catches, right? Runners making brilliant cuts and moves, and and guys making incredible blasting hits and tackles, all right. And then on top of that, all the complex schemes that people create, all right? Why it works? It works because there's rules. If there weren't rules, the game would rapidly degenerate to just a brawl. It's like look at a mob in the street, like a gang fight in the street. That's how much fun is that? Who gives a damn, right? You don't have the elegance and beauty here. All right, so I mean that's just an analogy. All right. Summary: the greatest resource for manipulation is the self. Who knows it's the best? Well, the devil. The devil is a god of self. He wants you to keep you committed to yourself. That's how he steers you away from God, right? the chief resource is keep you committed to yourself. Function. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to analyze education and U.S. history in terms of another theoretical school. There's many of them, right? One is called functionalism, and the key concept there is manifest versus latent functions. Manifest being on the surface, everyone can see. Latent is like underneath the surface, and the real driving thing here, right? So we're calling that education is one of the social forces that influence people. Right? There's all these social forces. Here's the target here. You, your brain, your reality. This is your total reality right here. Your cognitive reality. What you think is real to you, right? An important element of education is teaching our national histories, and the manifest or obvious function of American history is to teach you what happened. But the latent or real function of American history, or some of it, is to fill us with pride in the goodness of our nation with the following effects. One, it increases your ego identification with your country. It fuels your a sense of self-worth, right? Fuels patriotism, right? Which is pride in yourself through your country, right? It comes to pride in yourself. Don't give me this, right? Don't give me this sacrifice for your country. It's all about yourself. Increases our allegiance to our country and government. Blind allegiance increases docility. That is passive acceptance of government actions as being right, good, and justified, or increases our passionate pursuit of government goals. For example, a war, getting you to fight like mad dogs, getting you all pumped up with patriotism and all the other stuff, fear mongering. It is a means of increasing moral consensus, which are the things that bind us together as a people and a nation and makes us loyal, obedient, and subservient to our country and government. Things like our shared values, beliefs, ideas, goals, national interests. National interests can be totally self-serving, but if we got good values, that's fine, right? And U.S. has some good values. I got to admit that, right? We have great values. Problem is, we don't follow them enough, right? We give them lip service, but we don't really follow them. Right? We distort crap and serve ourselves. And common culture is and patterns of behavior, interactions are another thing that part of our moral consensus that hold us together, including language. People speaking a foreign language in our country. Some people get they get people speaking Spanish, right? Hey, don't speak Mexican, right? No, I'm sorry, it's not Mexican, it's Spanish for one. And anyways, right? You wear a different style of dress, you can be considered a threat. People think of you as a terrorist if you wear certain things. I swear, that ignorant. Another thing is powerful symbols that evoke powerful emotions, powerful emotional attachment. Flag, national anthem, bald eagle, 4th of July fireworks. Right? I tell you what, people get so hyped up and pumped up with emotions for this stuff, but emotions are blind. And the problem is, the big problem I have is they substitute for real values and principles and are entirely ego satisfying, right? You know what? People will sacrifice honesty and truth, right? For the patriotic beliefs to support what they want to believe. Why do they support it? Because it's right? No, because it makes them feel good, right? I mean, it's disgusting. They say, it represents values. No, you sacrifice your values to support the crap you want to believe. That's what people really do. Commonly held beliefs in the goodness of our country, including all the myths and fairy tales told about our history, like the Civil War. And people are determined to believe the fairy tales because it satisfies their egos and makes them feel good. And so they will fight to stick to their beliefs, despite all the facts and intelligent analysis. Crime, unreal, unbelievable. They'll point the finger and say, oh, that's unreal. They'll know nothing. They'll have no facts in their head, right? They just go on one-word reality. This is the basis of their belief. A word, unreal, unbelievable. Oh, see, that makes me right. And then I swear they'll think that, right? In reality, such people are the ones who are totally lost from reality, right? They don't know squat, right? I swear people are, run around with strong opinions about stuff they know nothing about. And you think they do the research, you think they do the study, You think they're capable of doing analysis? You know, they'll read some book and they'll just believe whatever the book says, and they won't even remember what the book will say. They'll finish a book after reading it, 300 pages, and they'll close it like, you'd be lucky that they remember one or two things. Latent function of education began with the founding of public education in Massachusetts. That's where public education developed, right? It was the Northeast, right? Not in the South. The South didn't give a damn about the people, leave them stupid and ignorant, right? All right. And the North, the reason for that, well, it's self-serving too. There are two main reasons why they pushed public education in the North, starting in Massachusetts. One was to create a more effective workforce, to give them some knowledge, be able to read, you can follow instructions. You can do some basic math, right? Do some calculations here. Give them some basic skills so that they can acquire more skills. And the other pillar was to create a docile, disciplined, obedient workforce that doesn't cause trouble. I mean, there's no sense in having troublemakers. You want people who are just productive, beneficial, right? Right. And an example here is in 1837, Horace Mann became head of a newly formed Massachusetts State Board of Education, and he pushed for universal public education. Everyone should get at least a primary school education, arguing that the best way to turn the nation's unruly children into disciplined, judicious public systems, schools were, right? I have no problem with that, right? The only problem I have is when it starts to bleed into and become manipulative social control, and it does, right? You're pumping out propaganda, right? That we pass off as history, which is myth, right? One example of the latent function of education is the teaching of the United States Civil War, right? It is generally taught and believed that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves, all right? Now, I've asked a lot of people, over the years, and recently too, because I'm doing this work, right? But over the years, I've been asking people, hey, what was the reason why the Civil War was fought? And these are the answers. I get three answers, okay? The first answer, which is the majority, but, a pretty good majority is, I don't know. Most people have no idea why it's fought. I swear, right? And they'll tell something kind of like sheepishly, gee, I wasn't that good in history when I was a kid, right? Crap, I wasn't good in history. I didn't give a damn when I was a kid, but I don't know, I remember stuff somehow, all right? My problem was I didn't care when I was a kid. The majority who can answer say, to free the slaves, right? So the vast majority who can say, and then a small minority will say, states' rights, right? I don't know why the hell they say states' rights, right? It wasn't slavery, it was states' rights. But then you ask them, okay, if it wasn't slavery and states' rights, what state right were they talking about? And you know what? You'll get nothing. I swear. No one will, like, what? I got the other day, everything. You mean slavery? No, everything. Yeah, they want to keep slavery out of it. I mean, why? I don't know, right? What was the only state right that the South was blabbing about after they seceded? Slavery. Like, they're going to free the slaves. They weren't saying, you're going to raise taxes. They're going to hey, fight this war for us because they're going to raise taxes and we're going to end up paying for all of it, us rich guys. So fight this war for us, rich guys. They weren't saying that. They were saying they're going to free the slaves because that's a threat to the masses, right? That was fear-mongering. Free the slaves, they're going to take your jobs, right? And who knows what they said also about free the slaves, right? To scare people. It's like releasing the wolves on you, or who knows what they said. They'll have no idea, right? When the sole state right the South was crying wolf about was the North is going to free the slaves. Right? That's what they were yelling, right? All right, so here's my contention, right? Freeing the slaves as a reason for the Civil War is total bullshit, right? I can't teach you all. I proved it, but I can't teach you it all again. But all right. Here's just some short things. But just because the slaves were freed as a result of the Civil War does not mean, in the least sense, that was a purpose for the Civil War. Just because the Southern elites cried wolf screaming, the North is going to free the slaves, does not make that true. I swear. I've run across people who say that. Well, that's absolute proof they're going to free the slaves because the South was saying it. What? The North did everything opposite. In reality, they did the exact opposite. Just because these guys are saying it doesn't mean that's so. You know? People have ulterior motives. They have cover stories. They lie. I mean, come on, right? You know, a first grader knows, a 5-year-old knows people lie. 5-year-olds lie. Are you kidding me? Right? You don't think people lie? All right. There was zero move in Congress to free the slaves. There's no bill. No bill, no freeing the slaves. Right? There's no bill, no threat to free the slaves. And even if there was such a bill, which there wasn't such a bill, right? There was zero chance that you get enough votes to free it. Hell, with the Civil War almost over and only the North in Congress, the North alone barely passed the 13th Amendment by only 2 votes. And that's with Lincoln buying votes and twisting arms and trying to, you know, get these votes, right? Barely. With the South was there was zero chance. No chance slavery would have passed. If there were a bill. And there was no bill. I mean, come on. What threat to slavery is there? You can't just wave a magic wand and say, okay, slavery's done. Right? It's in our Constitution. You got to change the Constitution of the United States. All right. And then, on top of that, it's got to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. Well, that's not happening, right? Because the southern states alone were almost half, right? And they're all going to vote against it because they're all slave states. 15 out of the 34 states were slave states. You're not getting 3/4 to vote for the damn thing, right? Every damn slave state's going to vote against it because they're a slave state. You think they're going to screw themselves? In fact, after the South started crying wolf, the North bent over backwards to guarantee protection, constitutional protection of slavery forever, and promotion of slavery by expanding slavery to new territories. Here, take New Mexico as a slave state. They're desperately trying to avoid war. They're trying to undercut the South's arguments, right? And they undercut their arguments. They have no basis, right? But do you think that stopped the South from fighting the war? No. Which means what? The whole slavery thing was bullshit. It was a cover story. The underlying motives had to do with, you know, well, I'll get to it in a second. I'll get to the real driving force behind it. And it's just going to be a summary again, too. So U.S. history on the Civil War taught in schools is fairy tale. It is myth. It is bullshit that serves to build artificial moral consensus, right? Holding us together, getting us committed to our governments. It creates the implicit belief. It creates implicit belief that because the Civil War was fought for noble and moral reasons, that just shows the United States is a good and moral country, and you can trust what it does, right? The North is going to free the slaves was a cover story, just like the Order of Councils was a cover story during the War of 1812. Remember, right after the war started, Britain rescinded it. That didn't stop us from fighting the war. And then right after they started seceding, and the southern states are crying, they're going to free the slaves, they're going to free the slaves. They started saying, wait a minute, right? No one's trying to free the slaves. In fact, we'll guarantee protection of slavery. We'll guarantee promotion of slavery, right? And that had zero effect on stopping the war. That means there were bigger motives behind the scenes. So the whole rally, North is going to free the slaves, was both cover story and the Southern elite's means of whipping up the poor Southern masses to fight for their benefit. The real causes of the Civil War are much more profound and found in 1. The onset of the Industrial Revolution and the divergent paths taken by Northern and Southern economies. Right? They went along 2 different paths. One seeking, value-added manufacturing. The other seeking to be a supplier of that for Great Britain. Supplier of raw materials. But all part of the Industrial Revolution. Increased volume of production through machine production. The economic competition between the infant industries of the North and the better developed industries, supply chains, distribution markets of Great Britain, who had the further advantage of naval power, large merchant fleets, and a worldwide colonial market, empire market. Right? They used their advantage to suppress and free trade to suppress other nations trying to develop. That was the whole Alexander Hamilton, Frederick List, infant industries thesis. Okay, so there was an opposite impact of import tariffs on North versus South. It was a boom for the North, but a bust for the South. It would benefit the North economy, but it would kill the Southern economy. The development of disparity of political power due to, among other things, inter alia, the development of economic symbiosis between the industrial Northeast and the resource-producing West, which forged a political alliance. The influx of European immigrants between 1840 to 1860, a big slug of them, with 9 out of 10 going to the North. The acquisition of new territories, increasing potential statehood and thus potential political power. Big chunks. Louisiana Purchase in 1803, Mexican secession in 1848. 1846 the Oregon Treaty, which got the whole Northwest Pacific area, right? All going to have a big effect upon statehood, which means a political effect, right? Depending upon whether they go free or slave, and they all wanted to go free because they're out protecting their opportunity, right? So next thing is the development of the principle of popular sovereignty. That was a principle that was developed and offered by Stephen Douglas in the 1850 Compromise. Had two main effects. One, it increased the number of free states, right? So it put control of statehood into the decision of the people, and they want it free. So it's just going to go, heavily imbalanced in the direction of free states, right? It fractured the Democratic Party. I'll show that below here. So those are the two key effects of popular sovereignty. And there was far greater opportunities offered in the North, and the threat that slavery posed to those opportunities in the forms of threatening jobs, threatening wages. You bring in slaves, you're competing against zero wages, affecting land opportunity, which fed popular demand for free statehood, right? All of this, right? And then the fracturing of the Democratic Party into three on the eve of the 1860 election, due to one, popular sovereignty, right? So if you're a Democrat in the North, and there's Northern Democrats, all right? If you're a Democrat in the North, there's no way you can exist. There's no way you can get reelected if you're going to hold to absolute sovereignty or absolute slavery when all the people are against slavery, not for the sake of blacks, but to protect their own opportunities, right? You're not going to get reelected. You're going to get run out of town. Now, the Southern Democrats had to stick to absolute slavery, right? If they're going to survive as if they're going to have any political viability, right? So that caused a split North and South. And then another split was the slave border states' economies had become dependent upon the North, right? And they became unconditional Union Party, right? They're not going to go against their money bag, right? Their source of income, right? They're going to stick with the North no matter what. And so they split up. So the Democratic Party split in three, and that killed their political chances, right? They were done, right? More states, far more states are going north. The only two states or territories which had a chance of going slave were Oklahoma and New Mexico. And both of them had minimal, political effect. New Mexico was basically a barren desert, little population, little chance for economic development, agricultural development. Oklahoma was still largely Indian territory, All right, and they couldn't vote. All right, all the rest of the territories go north. So the writing was on the wall. The South knew they were done. They knew it back in 1850. I read you that quote from Calhoun. Right? He knew it. He knew what's going to happen. He was going to happen by. He said by 10 years, right? He outlined what's going to happen. Southern Democratic Party is going to be done, and sure enough, this was no like they weren't blindsided by this. They saw the writing on the wall well before, and they were just watching it manifest. By 1860, they said we're done, right? That's what the Civil War was really about. There was no threat to free the slaves. It was about political power and how that translates to economic power or prosperity or poverty. Key effects of the Civil War: well, the slaves are freed, and it can be argued that it freed the Southern economy for economic growth. And tell you what, industry only came to the South after the Civil War, and that was usually with Northern capital, right? It was largely in the textile industry. You know, these textile manufacturers in the North probably said, "Oh, what the hell, man? Shorten our supply lines, right? We'll just send our companies down to the South. Plus, it'll be cheaper. You got all these damn poor Southern white people down there, right? Without jobs, right? You know, real estate's probably dirt cheap, especially after the war. We'll gobble up some land here, build a factory, hire people cheap. It'd be like sending work to Indochina or something like that, to some poor third world country, you know, getting cheap labor." So yeah, in reality, that's when they started to industrialize. The South started to industrialize after the Civil War. Full economic independence from Great Britain was attained. So you know, we won our political independence in the Revolutionary War, but that didn't mean we went full our economic independence. In fact, it can be argued and convincingly that the South, the Southern economy, was yet a subservient colonial minion to Great Britain, a third world primary product producing underdeveloped economy, dirt poor, serving the benefit of the British economy. While just a small handful of super rich elites who ran the show got even richer. Twice as rich as the richest people in the North. Right. And then the last key effect that I want to talk about here is the Civil War unleashed Western expansion. Right? You know, we said that Western expansion was being blocked up by the competition for political power between North and South, right? The whole statehood issue, right? Right. Once the Civil War occurred, South is out of the government, right? That cleared away any opposition, right? Cats away, the mice will play, and they passed everything they wanted. And that's what they rushed to do. Instead of freeing the slaves, they rushed to pass their economic agenda. And in the 25 years after the Civil War, right, between 1865 to 1890, which is Wounded Knee, it was also when the Fifth Transcontinental Railroad was completed. Right, spanning east-west. Wounded Knee being like, I guess, like the symbolic end of the Indian Wars. The last hurrah for the Indians, although there wasn't much to celebrate. They just got whacked and massacred there. So about as much country was settled in 25 years than the previous 258 years, right? Between founding of Jamestown here and the Civil War, right? So it was a rapid rush to fill out the rest of the country. Right. Now, the consequence of this is it meant a great increase in the Indian Wars. So the Indians just got whacked, right? You know, Western expansion was a driving engine of our economy. You got to keep that going. You got to keep pushing the Indians off the land. You can't build viable railroads unless you develop the land to carry freight. You can't develop the land if the Indians are there fighting you. So you got to go fight some wars, kill a bunch of Indians, kick them off, make sure they don't come back, right? It had pretty devastating effects, especially since the West was running out, I mean, when you're fighting them in the East Coast, right, you can always move west. When you find gold in northern Georgia, right, well, you can kill a bunch of Indians and kick them off and make sure that you pass a law, the Indian Removal Act, and make sure they go to Oklahoma, Indian territory, right? Who cares that they starve and die along the way? That's the whole Trail of Tears thing. All right. So yeah, once you push them further west, where are they going to go, right? My joke here is, you can't keep them pushing them until they're in the Pacific Ocean. What are they going to be? Boat people, like raft people, right? And what are they going to live off of? Fish and seaweed, right? You know what happens if all you eat is fish and seaweed? After a while, you become Japanese, right? I mean, that's what they eat, That's why they're so damn skinny. They should have some good American food like spaghetti and pizza, burgers and fries. Yeah. Tacos. There you go. That's American. Taco Bell. All right. All right. So Western expansion was the economic engine that powered the U.S. economy during the last quarter of the 19th century, while all of Europe suffered the Long Depression. I mean, the Long Depression wasn't that whole period, but it was much of it, right? That's why they call it the Long Depression. It was pretty damn long, and they suffered through it. And that was a key reason that drove their rabid colonial competition. Was they're all stuck in this Long Depression. There's a lot of economic analysis you got to go through for that. The late 19th century economy was characterized by boom and bust economic cycles, directly centered upon the fortunes of Western expansion economy. I know I'm going to get a lot of people attacking. Oh, no, it wasn't. That's not what's said in history book. Man, right? So I say it was subject to boom and bust business cycles due to one, there's temporary market saturations, right, for different reasons. Most obvious of all was completion of the fifth transcontinental railroad by 1890, right? I mean, where else are you going to go? The market's saturated. You're not building railroads into the ocean, right? Now it's a temporary saturation. You got potential to build like interconnecting lines. I mean, that's what happens, right? For example, all around Chicago, you built a main line in Chicago, then pretty soon you got lines, just spider webbing all around, right? But they come in time. They come as you develop the land. They don't grow overnight until there's a market for it. The speculative nature of railroad land development. I told you the speculative nature, In fact, that was what the Pacific Railroad Act was all about. You had to give them resources. You had to give them land grants to give them some asset which they can use to finance their railroad construction. All right? And then all that railroad construction depended upon there being, development of land. Now, that was speculation. They didn't know it was going to happen or when it's going to happen, right? So it's all speculative. You had to build a railroad first. And I call it the Field of Dreams thing, right? Because remember the famous line in the movie Field of Dreams was, if you build it, they'll come? Well, not necessarily. I mean, you're kind of hoping on it if the land is good. But that was one of the problems with the Northern Pacific. A lot of the land it went through wasn't good. You go through the Badlands up north, around there, right? Man, you're not growing much there. Anyways. Where is that? What was I at here? All right. Speculative overinvestment, especially when it was the only big game in town. Right? Everyone's investing in it. Results in the formation of big bubbles. Okay. So you're overinvesting, too much money following too few reasonable returns, right? Creates bubbles. Those bubbles burst. Another form of market saturation was, there's people are greedy. Farmers can be greedy, right? I mean, they're trying to make a profit for themselves, and they're trying to expand their farming and get more territory, whatever, right? But what can happen is production can grow faster than demand, right? You get overproduction, that's going to cause falling prices. That's going to result in business failures, economic crashes. So as you're expanding west, opening new territory, it's almost setting in motion your own demise, right? Once you start producing on it, that's going to drop commodity prices, right? So you got to wait for, demand to pick up and grow to meet that, and causes periodic crashes. All right, typical business cycle. It's also exacerbated by mechanized agriculture, which increased productivity, ag sciences, using irrigation, fertilizer use. Right, a lot of fertilizer are pretty primitive back then. Using bird crap. Literally, that was a huge source of nitrogen, guano. Right, before the Haber process was developed back then, but I don't know about when 1880s or 1890s or so, right? Which is nitrogen fixation from the air, right? Potash was just mining, right? Those basic stuff here. Delays in Indian removal. I believe a key reason for the 1873 crash was, it's not mentioned in history books. Right, and to me, it's just obvious. Right, they'll mention that Jay Cook was trying to sell bonds. He sent out all these salesmen to Europe to push his Northern Pacific Railroad, right? Sell these bonds, right? And he wasn't getting enough sales. He wasn't getting cash flow, and his bank became insolvent, right? When his bank crashed, right? When his bank crashed. He took out loans from all sorts of other banks. He was highly leveraged himself, right? He was in hock to all these other banks. When his bank crashed, they crashed. It was like a chain reaction, right? He couldn't pay them back, so they crashed because they're highly leveraged to him, and then that caused panic, that caused runs on banks, right? Everyone's running on banks, drawing their money out. Banks are collapsing because of that, because they don't have sufficient reserve requirements in the banks. And then that sent the panic through Wall Street. There was a fire sale. Everyone's selling off their securities, their stocks, right? Trying to liquidate everything to get some hard cash in their hands, some gold, right? That caused the stock market to crash. I mean, it all came tumbling down like a chain of dominoes, right? And that caused industries to fall. And those industries were falling before then. Right, railroad construction was falling, which took down steel, which took down locomotive building, which took down, lumber, which took down coal, which took down iron ore, on and on and on. They're all, it was too highly concentrated among one industry. So then you get these periodic crashes, all centered around the railroad. They'll blame other sources of insufficient financing, like, well, there was excessive demand due to the Chicago fire happened about the same time, and then you had the Boston fire occurring about a year later, right? Each of them causing high demand for capital to rebuild, right? They overlooked the total fact that, man, in 1873, the Northern Pacific Railroad reached Bismarck, North Dakota, which is the border of Indian Territory. That's the Missouri River. Everything west of there is Indian country. Right? You're going to try and get people to invest, right? What land do you have as collateral? Where are you going to build new railroad? In Indian Territory, where you get whacked by the Indians, right? Your railroad crews are going to get whacked, right? You got to go fight the Indians, kill the Indians, kick them off, right? That's still Indian Territory, right? You're gonna use Indian Territory as collateral for your bonds. Who's going to buy that, right? What freight are you going to have? What potential new freight are you going to have? Right, to make your railroad viable, right, in Indian Territory. So no one's buying their damn bonds, right? That to me, that's a fundamental reason why his railroad crashed. Right? Don't give me these other sources of shortages of finance, right? No one wants to buy his damn bonds. All right. Okay. So you see how one railroad took down the whole damn economy, right? It all came down like a house of cards. So over leverage investment. I mean, look at Jay Cook, right? He finances railroad with bonds, but he also financed it by getting loans, right? he had a big bank and was trusted, and he's borrowing heavily from everyone. When he goes down, he takes everyone else around with him, right? Uh, then our financial system crashes, right? And there's no mandated reserve requirements in banks. Over-leveraged interbank lending, you know, setting up a house of dominoes. Then, when they all crash down, when all these banks crash, you have capital dry up overnight. Okay, capital vanishes. There's no money to operate your business. There's no money to invest, right? It also sparked a panic on Wall Street, massive sell-off. You liquidate, all your assets for gold, and all this crashed the economy. No money for investing here, right? Limited technology and thus limited product diversity. Yeah, right. So this is called the second industrial revolution because you had the invention of things. You had the invention of telegraph. Well, no, telegraph was earlier. That was 1830s and stuff, being put in around 1840s. But telephone. You had chemical industry. You had steel industry about 1850s, 60s, right? You had electricity. You had automobiles. You had oil. You had the chemical industry, right? But none of those saw any significant market expansion until the 20th century. A lot of them not until well into the 20th century. Not of them until World War II, right? So I don't know why historians make a big deal of that. Sure, that's when they were invented, but they didn't manifest into real market value until much later, right? It was still a one-dimensional economy as far as industry. 90% of industry was well, the big chunk of industry was still steel and railroads, right? You had textiles, that was big always, right? You had other, home building stuff, right? But even that's connected to Western expansion, town building, and all that stuff. Okay. Limited technology and thus limited product diversity, one-dimensional economy, all eggs in one basket, right? Concentrate too much in a single industry, like resource development and railroad development. Resource development that was linked to ag machines. You can't count ag machines as a separate industry because that's same with resource development, right? They're tied together. Fertilizer, the chemical industry. Chemical industry was largely almost all fertilizer, but there was no synthetic chemical industry. Not until World War II, really. You had a few things developed before World War II, like rayon, nylon. You had Bakelite, maybe some other more advanced plastics, right? But just a handful, tiny handful. It wasn't until World War II and after World War II that the synthetic chemistry industry really boomed. All right. So it's all fertilizers, right? But that's tied to ag, right? Resource development, right? Railroad development, train, steam engines, all tied to railroad development. Steel industry, rail, right? Coal, iron ore, right? Lumber for rails. That was a huge demand for lumber, was rails. And then for building material, but that's resource development. Western expansion was a huge part of that. Railroad development depended upon access to capital, right? Railroad development depended upon progress in the Indian removal, right? Resource development and railroad development went hand in hand. And then sure, there were other factors. This is the whole symbiotic thing, right? I told you about. There were other factors like export market conditions. One of the factors was how well the European wheat crop went. European wheat crop was devastated. Oh, well, that was great for American farmers, right? If they had a good year, well, that sucked for American farmers. Or if there's a European war, whenever there's a European war, that was great for American farmers. Look at the Crimean War. That was a big boom for American farmers, right? Franco-Prussian War is probably too short there. That was a short war. That really did. Okay, where are we at? Okay. Gold standard. And this is a big problem because, that led to deflation, which is falling prices, and that led to business failure. Increased mechanization, that leads to overproduction. Falling prices, that leads to business failure. Financial credit problems. Overseas, well, one of the things that happened in 1890 was the Baring Brothers crisis, right? What was that? They were overly invested in Brazilian agriculture. That tanked. So the Baring Brothers went down. That took down the London, financial system, right? And to survive, they had a massive sell-off of U.S. securities, right? They're dumping U.S. stuff, right? And they're cashing out and getting gold. That led to depletion of U.S. currency, shortage of money. That affected the access to capital. It also was deflationary, right? All the above could cause falling prices and increased business failure. So all these related causes of falling prices, right? So here is a diagram that shows the history of railroad installed lines, how much new railroad was built each year, right? You see it's going up here. The Civil War hits, it goes down. Well, all the money and efforts and workers are now soldiers. Everything's going into the war effort, right? But then we said that Western expansion or the Civil War unleashed Western expansion, and sure enough, it's taken off here, right? But when fits and starts here, you see, and you'll see that after every peak of Western expansion, railroad construction, there's a fall, and then there's a crash. Peaks, fall, crash. Peaks, fall, crash. Right? Okay, now that's just a correlation, but there's other factors, but these were primarily failures of the Western expansion, the combined Western expansion, railroad development industry, economic system, right? It was a key engine, right? And it gets more complicated. I mean, this is clear. This is obviously this is pretty simply a railroad driven thing, right? This gets more complicated when you get, Baring Brothers and all that stuff, right? But, I mean, big thing that's happening is we got to slow down. You got a saturation in the market, right? All right. So yeah, that whole Western expansion railroad development system was the same thing that drove European economies. They did it with colonial nations, going into other colonial nations, accessing the interior resources by building railroads into them, right? Feeding their industry. So they're doing the exact same thing we're doing. It was all simple economics back then, right? And that's what the Western expansion legislation was all about, to feed that. So here's a final summary. The Civil War is another example of crap U.S. history. The notion that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves is a myth. It's fairy tale. The Civil War myth is an example of education as a social force to manipulate the masses. Social forces are about influence and control, and they're always working without people knowing. All right? The self is a driving force behind all we do and believe. People are free to believe whatever they want to believe, and they do so. Right? The Civil War is an example of this fact to the extent people are determined to fight to believe what they want to believe, despite of all the facts and evidence and intelligent analysis. It just shows you how effective the self is. Thusly, the Civil War is a real-world demonstration of the power of the self and self-delusion. To believe what you want to believe. You're going to stick to it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Though people are free to believe what they want to believe, and they do, they are also manipulated and never know it. I mean, every day they're manipulated by social reality, but they're manipulated in many other ways. People think themselves smart consumers of information, but the opposite is usually true. People blindly accept what is being passed without doing the research, without doing analysis, without studying and retaining any facts, right? They just take what's being said and they say, oh, everyone's saying it? Well, that's true, right? They'll say, no, I don't do it. They do it in a heartbeat every day. They just look at their phones and say, okay, I know what's going on. I know it's true because I know what everyone's saying. They have no idea the complexity of facts involved, and they just believe something based on one or two sentences. I swear, 20 seconds is all they need. Especially if it is backed up by social reinforcement of social reality. That makes it really real in their minds, but only real there. makes it real and true when there's no reality in it. It is a simple, stupid crap. No. Finally, Western expansion, which is a legacy of the Civil War, had a significant impact on the next two wars I'm going to talk about. Obviously, the Indian Wars. You're expanding fast west. Well, you're going to have to fight a lot of wars, and they did, right? Whole bunch of wars, and the Spanish-American War. That's another war that had a big effect. All right, so that's it for this lesson.